Hey man, there's a situation almost every guy runs into at some point, where you're dealing with a woman. Things seem like they're moving in one direction, there's flirting, there's chemistry, maybe you've already gone on a couple dates, maybe you've been talking every night, maybe you've even been together for a while, and then suddenly she hits you with something that sounds harmless. She says, "You know, I really like having you in my life. I just think we'd be better as friends." And most guys hear that sentence and immediately start searching for the positive part of it. They think, well, she still wants me around. She could have completely disappeared. She could have blocked me. She could have told me she never wanted to see me again. Instead, she's telling me that she values me enough to keep me in her life. So maybe this isn't really the end. Maybe I just need to be patient. Maybe if I stay close to her and show her that I'm a good guy, eventually she'll realize what she had sitting right in front of her. And I understand why a guy thinks like that, because emotionally it gives him something to hold on to. It makes the rejection feel temporary instead of permanent. But the problem is that he's usually interpreting that offer based on what he wants it to mean, rather than paying attention to what her behavior is actually telling him. Because if you wanted romance and she's telling you she wants something completely different, staying close to her doesn't magically preserve the original relationship. The relationship has already changed. And if you don't recognize that change immediately, you can spend 6 months participating in an arrangement that feels hopeful to you, while she has already mentally moved into an entirely different chapter. And this is where guys get themselves in trouble, because they think proximity automatically creates opportunity. They think, if I'm still talking to her, I'm still in the game. If she's still texting me, I'm still in the game. If she calls me when she's upset, I'm definitely still in the game. If she sends me memes at midnight or tells me about problems at work or asks what I think about something happening in her life, then obviously there must still be something there. But you have to separate emotional access from romantic interest, because those are two completely different things. Somebody can enjoy talking to you without wanting a relationship with you. Somebody can trust you without being attracted to you. Somebody can miss having conversations with you without missing you as a romantic partner. And this distinction is incredibly important, because a guy who doesn't understand it will treat every little interaction like evidence that things are slowly turning around. She calls him because she had a bad day, and he thinks, "See, I'm the person she comes to." Yeah, maybe you are, but what exactly are you to her in that moment? Are you the man she wants, or are you the person she knows will answer the phone and listen for an hour? Those aren't necessarily the same position. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with listening to somebody or being supportive. The problem begins when you're providing that support, because secretly you believe every conversation is another deposit into some invisible account that eventually gets exchanged for romance. That's where resentment starts building, because you're participating in one relationship while internally expecting another. You know, I've watched guys do this for years. A woman tells a guy very clearly that she doesn't want anything romantic anymore, and instead of accepting the information, he starts negotiating with reality. He thinks, okay, she feels that way right now, but feelings change, and technically, sure, feelings can change. Human beings change their minds about things every day, but you cannot organize your entire life around the possibility that somebody might eventually feel differently about you. Imagine applying that logic anywhere else. Imagine somebody tells you, "I'm not hiring you for this job, but we can stay in contact," and instead of applying anywhere else, you show up outside that company every morning for 6 months, hoping the manager eventually changes his mind. Everyone would tell you that you're wasting your time, but because attraction involves emotion, guys suddenly throw all common sense out the window. They start thinking patience itself is seductive. They think if they demonstrate enough loyalty while she explores whatever else she wants to explore, eventually she'll look back and say, "Wow, he was here the entire time." Maybe. But there's another possibility nobody likes thinking about. She might simply become accustomed to you being there. Your presence becomes normal. Your attention becomes expected. Your availability becomes something she doesn't even have to think about. And ironically, the thing you believed would demonstrate your value can sometimes make your attention feel less valuable because it's available, regardless of what she gives you in return. Now, I want to make something clear, because people get emotional whenever you talk about this stuff. Her suggesting a platonic relationship does not automatically mean she's manipulating you. It doesn't automatically mean she has some evil master plan, where she's sitting there thinking, how can I extract attention from this guy while giving him absolutely nothing? Most people aren't operating with some calculated strategy like that. Sometimes she genuinely likes you as a person. Maybe she enjoys your humor. Maybe she trusts you. Maybe she thinks you're intelligent. Maybe you've known each other for years, and she doesn't want to lose that history just because the romantic side didn't work. Maybe she feels guilty because she knows you're more emotionally invested than she is, and she thinks keeping some connection is kinder than disappearing completely. There are dozens of possibilities, but here's the important part. Her intentions do not determine whether the arrangement is healthy for you. That's the part guys forget. You don't have to prove that somebody is malicious before you're allowed to say, "This situation doesn't work for me." If talking to her every day keeps you emotionally stuck, then it doesn't really matter whether she's intentionally keeping you stuck. You still have to deal with the effect it's having on your life. And that's maturity, man. Maturity is understanding that boundaries aren't punishments. You're not saying, "You rejected me, therefore I'm going to punish you by disappearing." You're saying, "I wanted one kind of connection, you want another. I respect that, but pretending I'm comfortable with something I'm not comfortable with would be dishonest." This becomes even more complicated when you're talking about somebody you previously dated, because now you're not starting from zero. There are memories attached to everything. She texts you at 11:30 at night, saying, "Remember that restaurant we went to?" And immediately, your brain goes back there. You remember where you were sitting. You remember what she was wearing. You remember whatever stupid joke the two of you made that night. And suddenly you're not processing a text message. You're processing an entire emotional history. Then maybe she says, "I miss talking to you." And man, that's where a lot of guys lose their footing, because they don't hear the sentence exactly as it was spoken. They hear, "I miss us." Those are not necessarily the same statement. People miss pieces of relationships all the time without wanting those relationships back. You can miss somebody's sense of humor and still know you shouldn't date them. You can miss Sunday mornings together and still know the relationship wasn't working. You can miss having somebody available to talk to and still not want romantic intimacy with them. Human emotions are messy like that. We like to imagine everything exists in clean categories, where either somebody loves you and wants you completely, or they feel absolutely nothing. Real life isn't like that. She can genuinely miss you and genuinely not want to be with you at the same time. And if you don't understand that, every little piece of nostalgia becomes evidence in a case you're building for reconciliation when she might simply be experiencing nostalgia. And look, the easiest way to figure out whether staying close is something you can genuinely handle is to ask yourself one uncomfortable question. What happens when she starts seeing somebody else? Don't answer it intellectually. Every guy can sit there and say, "Oh, I'll be fine, I'm mature." Actually picture it. You're talking to her regularly. She calls you, you joke around, maybe you get coffee occasionally. You've convinced yourself everything is cool. Then one Friday night, you text her and she doesn't answer. Saturday morning, she finally responds and casually tells you she was on a date. What happens inside you? If your stomach drops, if you immediately start wondering who the guy is, what he looks like, whether she kissed him, whether she's more attracted to him than she was to you, then man, you're probably not participating in a friendship. You're participating in a waiting room. You're sitting there hoping your number gets called again, and that's an exhausting place to live, because now every new man in her life becomes competition, even though she never agreed that there was a competition happening. She thinks you're her friend. You're secretly tracking whether she's becoming available again. That's not fair to you, and realistically, it's not particularly honest with her either. A genuine platonic relationship requires you to accept that person's romantic independence. If you can't sincerely want her to meet somebody she likes, then you probably need distance before you can even think about being around her in that capacity. This is also why I don't like the advice that tells guys, just stay close and eventually she'll see your value. Your value isn't something that should require an undercover operation. You're not supposed to disguise yourself as somebody's body for 8 months while secretly running a romantic campaign in the background. If you're interested, there's nothing wrong with being interested. If you want to date her, own that. You don't have to give some dramatic speech. You don't have to stand outside her apartment in the rain holding flowers like you're in some movie. You just have to be honest with yourself about why you're there. And if she doesn't want the same thing, okay. That's disappointing, but at least you have clarity. What destroys guys is ambiguity combined with hope, because hope can make almost anything look meaningful. She likes your Instagram story and you think something's happening. She sends you a song and you spend 20 minutes analyzing the lyrics. She says, "I was thinking about you today," and now you're calling your friend saying, "Bro, I think she's coming around." Meanwhile, she might genuinely just be communicating with somebody she considers a friend. When you want an outcome badly enough, your brain becomes incredibly talented at collecting evidence for it. That's why clarity is valuable, even when the answer isn't the answer you wanted. Now, there's another version of this that happens after a breakup, and I think this one confuses guys even more. She ends the relationship, but she doesn't really want you completely gone. She wants to check on you. She wants to know how you're doing. Maybe she still sends you things that remind her of you. Maybe she asks whether you've been seeing anybody. Maybe she gets strangely curious when you start becoming less available. And naturally the guy thinks, well, if she doesn't want me, why does she care whether I'm dating somebody else? Because emotional attachment doesn't always disappear at the exact same moment that somebody decides a relationship isn't working. That's the part people miss. She might still have attachment, curiosity, jealousy, familiarity, even affection, while simultaneously believing that she doesn't want to resume the relationship. And yes, sometimes people reconsider after a breakup. That happens. But you should not confuse emotional leftovers with a decision to rebuild something. The only thing that really matters is consistent behavior. If somebody genuinely wants another chance with you, eventually the conversation has to move beyond vague nostalgia and into something concrete. I miss you isn't a relationship plan. I've been thinking about us isn't a relationship plan. I don't want to lose you isn't necessarily a relationship plan either. Those statements tell you somebody is experiencing emotions. They don't tell you what they're prepared to do about those emotions. And this is where I think a man has to learn to tolerate disappointment without immediately trying to negotiate his way out of it. That's a huge life skill, not just a dating skill. Sometimes somebody doesn't choose you. Sometimes you don't get the opportunity. Sometimes the relationship you thought was going somewhere suddenly changes direction, and your instinct is going to be, how do I fix this? Because men are problem solvers. Give a guy a broken lawnmower, and he'll spend 6 hours in the garage taking the thing apart, even though buying another one would have taken 20 minutes. We like believing there's some sequence of actions that solves the problem. So when somebody says, I don't see you romantically, the guy starts looking for the sequence. Maybe I'll become less available. Maybe I'll become more available. Maybe I'll get in better shape. Maybe I'll post pictures with other women. Maybe I'll make her jealous. Maybe I'll use no contact for exactly 30 days and then send this specific text message. And before you know it, his entire life is revolving around changing one person's emotional response. Man, that is backwards. Improve yourself? Absolutely. Get stronger. Make more money. Become socially sharper. Build an interesting life. But do those things because they improve your existence, not because you're hoping one specific woman eventually looks at you differently. Otherwise, even your self-improvement becomes another form of chasing. So when that conversation happens and she says she'd still like to keep you around, don't immediately ask, what does this secretly mean? First ask something much more useful. What do I actually want? Because that's the question that determines everything that comes afterward. If you genuinely enjoy her company and the romantic interest is gone, fine. There are men and women who have perfectly normal platonic relationships. There's nothing weak about that. But if you look at her and you know damn well that the second she calls you at midnight, you're going to start hoping again, be honest about it. If you know hearing about another guy is going to ruin your entire week, be honest about it. If you're staying around because you believe being patient will eventually earn you another opportunity, at least admit that to yourself. You don't have to hate her. You don't have to block her dramatically. You don't need some final paragraph telling her that she'll regret losing a good man. You don't need to post cryptic quotes about loyalty on Instagram. You can simply say, in whatever words feel natural to you, that you respect what she wants, but staying close isn't something you're interested in right now. Then you go live your life. And strangely enough, that's where this subject actually gets interesting, because once a man stops treating that offer as a hidden doorway back into romance, he starts noticing something about these situations that he couldn't see while he was emotionally invested in the outcome. The question isn't really whether she wants to keep some version of you in her life. The bigger question is why you feel obligated to accept a position you never wanted in the first place. And man, that last question is important, because a lot of guys act as though whatever arrangement a woman proposes is automatically the arrangement they have to accept. She says, I don't think we should date anymore, but I really want us to stay close, and the guy immediately starts figuring out how he's going to make that work. Wait a minute, why are you assuming you have to make it work? She just made a decision based on what she wants, which she has every right to do, but you have exactly the same right. This is something guys lose sight of when they're emotionally attached. They become so focused on not losing the woman completely that they stop asking whether the version of the relationship being offered is even something they want. Imagine you walk into a restaurant and order a steak, and 20 minutes later the waiter comes out with a bowl of cereal. You say, "Well, this isn't what I ordered," and he says, "Yeah, unfortunately we decided we're not serving steak to you, but you can have the cereal." You wouldn't sit there thinking, "How do I become grateful for this cereal?" You'd probably just say, "No thanks," and go somewhere else. And obviously relationships are much more complicated than ordering dinner, but the basic principle is similar. You entered the situation wanting something specific. She has decided she doesn't want that same thing. Nobody necessarily did anything wrong. It simply means the agreement changed. And when an agreement changes, both people get to decide whether the new terms work for them. You know what makes this difficult though? Sometimes the alternative she offers feels almost identical to what you had before. That's what really messes with a guy's head. Maybe you were seeing each other for 2 months. You were texting every morning, talking at night, going out once or twice a week. Then she tells you she doesn't think the romantic side is right for her. But strangely enough, she continues texting every morning. She still calls you at night, she still wants to grab food, she still sends pictures of whatever she's doing. And you're sitting there thinking, what exactly changed? Well, something very important changed. Even if the surface behavior hasn't caught up with it yet, the expectation changed. Before, those interactions were moving towards something. Now, at least according to what she told you, they're not. And direction matters more than activity. 2 people can be walking side by side while heading toward completely different destinations. That's why counting messages, phone calls, likes, jokes, and little moments can become misleading. Guys will tell me, "But she texts me every day." Okay, and what is the relationship actually progressing toward? Well, she says she doesn't want a relationship. Then you already have the answer. Don't use 10 ambiguous behaviors to override one clear statement, simply because the ambiguous behaviors give you the answer you prefer. If somebody tells you directly what they want, take that seriously until their actions and their words clearly demonstrate otherwise. And another thing happens here that almost nobody talks about. When a guy accepts this arrangement while secretly wanting more, he can start behaving differently without even realizing it. He becomes extremely careful. He doesn't want to say the wrong thing because he doesn't want her to disappear. He doesn't want to date somebody else too seriously because somewhere in the back of his mind, he's thinking she might change her mind. He starts making himself available whenever she calls because he wants her to associate him with comfort. Maybe she needs help moving something. He shows up. Her car is acting weird. He's there looking under the hood. She had an argument with somebody. He's listening to the entire story. She needs advice about work. He's writing paragraphs. And again, individually, none of these things are bad. Helping somebody isn't weakness. Being a decent human being isn't weakness, but intention matters. If you're doing all of it because you genuinely value a platonic connection and expect nothing beyond it, that's one thing. If you're doing it because somewhere deep down you're saying, eventually she's going to realize how much I do for her, then you're basically running an unpaid emotional internship, hoping it turns into a full-time position. And man, that's not a good place to be because she never agreed to those terms. You're building expectations she doesn't even know exist. Then eventually resentment shows up. That's almost inevitable if you stay in that position long enough. At first you're patient. You're thinking, no pressure. I'm just going to let things happen naturally. A month goes by, then 2 months. Then maybe she starts telling you about some guy she's talking to. Now you're irritated, but you can't really express that irritation because technically you're not together, so you swallow it. Then she cancels plans with you because she's going somewhere with him. Now you're really irritated. Again, what are you supposed to say? You can't cancel our hangout to go on a date? She's going to look at you like, why not? We're friends. And technically she's right. That's the agreement you accepted. That's why you have to be careful about agreeing to things that don't match what you actually feel. You can blame her later and say she used you or led you on, but sometimes, man, you led yourself on. She told you what she wanted and you accepted it, while privately hoping the terms would change. That's not necessarily manipulation on her part. Sometimes that's just 2 people operating under completely different interpretations of the same relationship. And the guy could have prevented months of frustration by being honest with himself on day one. Now, there is another side of this, because sometimes the offer isn't purely about maintaining a genuine platonic connection. Sometimes people don't want to lose access to someone, even though they don't want the responsibility that came with the previous relationship. And I'm deliberately saying people because men do this too. You can end things with somebody and then 3 weeks later find yourself wondering what they're doing. You check their profile. You wonder whether they're seeing somebody. Maybe you send a random message because you miss the familiarity. That doesn't necessarily mean you want them back. Sometimes you just don't like the feeling that a person who used to be available to you isn't available anymore. Human beings get attached to access. We get attached to routines. You get used to somebody answering the phone. You get used to having somebody to go to dinner with. You get used to sending them whatever stupid video you saw online. Then suddenly that person disappears and there's a hole in your routine, so you reach back out. That's why you have to be careful about assigning some huge romantic meaning to every attempt to reconnect. Sometimes somebody isn't trying to restart the relationship, they're trying to restart the comfort. Think about what happens after a breakup. During the relationship, there are hundreds of tiny habits you don't even notice. You wake up and there's a message from that person. Something funny happens and they're the first person you think about telling. You're driving somewhere and you automatically call them. You know what they're doing on Wednesday nights. You know when they get off work. You know what food they order. You know what television show they're watching. Then the relationship ends, and logically both people understand what happened, but the habits don't disappear overnight. Your hand still reaches for the phone. Something funny happens and your brain still goes, I need to tell her this. She experiences some of that too. So maybe 2 weeks later, she sends you something random. The guy sees her name appear on his phone and his heart jumps. I knew it. She misses me. Well, yeah, she might miss you. Again, missing somebody isn't the same thing as choosing them. That's such an important distinction. People can miss situations they themselves decided to leave. You've probably quit a job you hated and then 6 months later thought about some coworker you used to laugh with. That doesn't mean you want the job back. It means human beings can miss pieces of an experience without wanting the entire experience restored. And here's where a lot of internet dating advice makes things unnecessarily weird, because it tells guys that every interaction is some kind of power game. She texted you after 3 weeks. She's testing whether she still has access. Maybe. Or maybe she saw something that reminded her of you and sent it without thinking much about it. She wants to remain close. She wants to keep you as a backup. Maybe in some situations. In others, maybe she genuinely cares about you but doesn't feel romantic compatibility. You don't actually need to become a mind reader to handle any of this correctly. That's the beautiful part. You don't need to spend 4 hours analyzing her hidden motivations. You don't need to figure out whether she's consciously keeping you around, unconsciously attached to you, confused, lonely, nostalgic, bored, or just trying to be nice. Your decision can be based on information you already have. What do you want? What does she want? And are those things compatible? That's it. Guys drive themselves crazy trying to diagnose the woman's psychology when their own position is the only thing they actually control. Let's say she says, I don't want to date, but I really don't want to lose you. Okay, you wanted a romantic relationship. She doesn't. There's your mismatch. Now you ask yourself whether you can genuinely interact with her without expecting anything else. If the answer is yes, fine. If the answer is no, you create distance. You don't need anger to do that. And this is something I wish more guys understood, because a lot of men believe they need to turn the woman into a villain before they're allowed to walk away. They start telling themselves, she wasted my time, she disrespected me, she never cared about me, she was using me. Man, maybe none of that is true. Maybe she simply doesn't feel the same way anymore. That's painful enough. You don't have to invent a crime to justify leaving the situation. Sometimes nobody is wrong, and the situation still isn't right for you. That's adulthood. Two people can genuinely care about each other and still need to go in different directions. You can wish somebody well from a distance. You can appreciate what happened without volunteering for a front row seat to whatever happens next. Because think about what staying extremely close can do to your ability to move forward. Let's say another woman enters your life 2 months later. She's attractive, intelligent, she likes you, and everything seems easy, but you're still talking to the previous woman every day. Who gets your emotional attention? You might physically be sitting across from this new woman at dinner, while mentally wondering why the other one hasn't replied to your message. The new woman tells you something about herself, and half your brain is somewhere else. Maybe the previous woman suddenly calls while you're on the date, and you feel an urge to answer. That's when you realize the old situation isn't actually over inside your head. You're trying to build something new, while keeping one foot planted in something that already changed. And then guys wonder why they can't connect with anyone else. Well, because emotionally you're not available. You keep telling yourself you're single, but your attention is still committed. That's why distance after rejection or a breakup isn't some magical tactic designed to make somebody chase you. Sometimes distance is simply practical. It gives your nervous system time to stop expecting that person. It gives your routines time to change. It allows your attention to return to the rest of your life. And this brings us to something deeper, because the hardest part for many guys isn't actually losing the romantic relationship, it's losing the possibility. That's what they're holding on to. The possibility that one day she changes her mind, the possibility that she dates somebody else and realizes you were better, the possibility that 6 months from now she sends that message saying, "I made a mistake," and as long as you remain extremely close, that possibility feels alive. That's why walking away can feel so difficult, even when logically you know staying around isn't helping you. Creating distance feels like you're closing the door yourself. You start thinking, what if she was about to come back and I ruined it by leaving? But man, if somebody genuinely decides they want to rebuild something with you, your refusal to sit beside the phone every day isn't going to make communication impossible. People know how to find people when they truly want to find them. The bigger danger is putting your own life on hold because you're afraid that moving forward might eliminate a future that exists only in your imagination. And once you understand that, you start realizing that sometimes the offer to remain close isn't the real trap at all. The real trap is the meaning you attach to accepting it. And man, once you understand that, you start looking at the whole situation differently, because now you're no longer sitting there trying to decode every little thing she does. You're not checking whether she replied faster today than she did yesterday. You're not thinking, she used 2 heart emojis instead of 1, maybe something changed. You're not wondering why she watched your story 5 minutes after you posted it. That's the kind of stuff a guy starts doing when he has accepted one arrangement outwardly while secretly hoping for another one internally. Every interaction becomes evidence. Every silence becomes evidence. Everything means something because he desperately needs it to mean something. And I think most guys who have been in this position know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be sitting there doing something completely unrelated, and suddenly you'll remember some tiny detail from a conversation 3 days ago. She said, "You looked good today." And now you're thinking, why would she tell me I looked good if she didn't feel anything? Man, because people give compliments. Because attraction and commitment aren't necessarily the same thing. Because she might still think you're attractive and still not want to date you. There could be 20 explanations. The problem isn't that you're incapable of figuring out which explanation is correct. The problem is that you've created a situation where your emotional state depends on figuring it out. That's when you've handed too much control over your peace of mind to somebody else's behavior. And once you're there, the smartest thing you can usually do isn't analyze harder. It's create enough space that you stop needing an answer to every little question. You know, guys sometimes think creating that space means you have to become cold or cruel. They'll say, "So what am I supposed to do? Just ignore her." No, you don't need to turn into some cartoon character. You don't have to suddenly act like you never cared. In fact, pretending you don't care when you obviously do is usually just another form of emotional dependence, because you're still constructing your behavior around her reaction. You're thinking, "I'm going to act cold, so she wonders what happened." Well, you're still doing it for her. You're still checking whether it worked. You're still emotionally centered around the same person. Real detachment is much quieter than that. It looks like accepting what she told you and adjusting your behavior accordingly. Maybe you don't initiate conversations anymore. Maybe you stop spending 3 hours on the phone with her every night. Maybe you don't hang out one-on-one for a while. Maybe you simply tell her, "I understand where you're coming from, but that's not really what I'm looking for, so I'm going to take some space." Then you actually take the space. You don't announce it every week. You don't post something hoping she'll see it. You don't disappear for 12 days and then send a picture of your dinner because you couldn't handle the silence. You just return your attention to your own life. And that sounds simple, But emotionally it's difficult because now you're removing the little doses of hope that were keeping you attached. That's actually something people underestimate. Hope feels good in the short term, even when it's hurting you in the long term. Think about it. She sends you a message and for the next 2 hours you feel great. You're thinking maybe things are changing. Then she becomes distant again and you crash. 3 days later she calls and suddenly you're back up. Then she mentions another guy and you're down again. You're basically putting your emotional state on a slot machine. Pull the lever. Maybe today she gives you attention. Pull it again. Maybe she disappears. Pull it again. Maybe she says she misses you. And because the positive moments happen unpredictably, they can become incredibly difficult to let go of. You keep waiting for the next one. That's why some guys remain attached to situations that objectively make them miserable. They're not miserable every second. If they were, leaving would actually be easier. Instead, they get just enough positive interaction to keep the possibility alive. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean she's deliberately doing that to you. She might have absolutely no idea that you're interpreting the interactions this way. But your brain doesn't care whether it's intentional. It just knows that every once in a while, you receive something that makes you feel like maybe the original connection isn't completely gone. So when you create distance, you're not only separating from a person, you're separating from that cycle of anticipation. And there's another uncomfortable reason some guys accept the arrangement: scarcity. Deep down, they don't believe another woman they like that much is going to come along. That's really what it is sometimes. If a guy genuinely believed there were plenty of opportunities ahead of him, he would be disappointed when one didn't work out, sure, but he wouldn't feel like his entire romantic future just disappeared. The problem is, he met one woman he really liked and mentally turned her into the last helicopter leaving the country. Now everything becomes urgent. I can't lose her completely. I need to keep some connection. Why? Because underneath all of it, he's thinking, what if I never meet another woman like this? And man, that's where you have to be careful, because scarcity makes you tolerate arrangements you normally wouldn't choose. It happens with jobs, it happens with money, it happens with relationships. When you believe something is your only opportunity, you'll accept almost any terms to keep access to it. That's why building a full life matters so much. Have friends, have goals, get yourself in shape, build your career, develop interests, meet people, go places. Not because those things are tricks to make women want you, but because the less empty your life is, the less likely you are to make one person's approval the center of your emotional universe. I've known guys where you could almost see this happening in real time. They'll meet somebody and within 3 weeks, everything else starts disappearing. They stop hanging out with their friends as much, they stop going to the gym consistently, they rearrange their weekends around her. Every conversation somehow becomes about her. Then when she says, I'm not sure this is what I want, the guy doesn't just feel like he's losing a woman, he feels like he's losing his entire routine because he built his routine around her. So naturally when she offers some way of remaining connected, he grabs onto it. Of course he does. It's like somebody tearing down your house and then offering you one room back. You're going to be tempted to live in the room because at least it's familiar, but the healthier move might be rebuilding your own house. And that's why people who maintain their identity throughout relationships usually recover better when relationships change. They still hurt, don't misunderstand me. Having hobbies doesn't make heartbreak disappear. Going to the gym isn't some magical cure. But when your relationship is one part of your life, instead of your entire life, losing it doesn't destroy every other structure supporting you. Now, here's where things can become interesting. Sometimes when you genuinely accept that the romantic possibility is finished and begin moving forward, the dynamic between the two of you changes. Maybe she becomes more curious. Maybe she reaches out more. Maybe she notices you're not constantly available anymore. Maybe she even starts questioning her decision. That can happen. Human attraction isn't a mathematical equation, but this is where guys make another mistake. They hear that and immediately turn moving on into a strategy for getting her back. Now, we're right back where we started. He's at the gym thinking, wait until she sees me in 3 months. He's going out with friends thinking, I hope somebody posts a picture so she sees I'm having fun. He's talking to another woman while secretly thinking about how jealous the first woman might become. That's not moving on, man. That's a performance. You're still orbiting the same person. You've just increased the radius. Real movement happens when the outcome stops controlling your decisions. If she comes back, you'll evaluate that situation when it happens. If she doesn't, your life still continues. That's the mindset that actually gives you your footing back, because you're no longer trying to manipulate somebody else's emotions into producing the answer you want. And suppose she does become more interested after you step away. This is where you have to pay attention, because not every return means the same thing. Maybe she genuinely reconsidered. Maybe the distance gave her clarity. Maybe she realized she actually valued the romantic connection more than she thought. That's possible. But maybe she simply misses your attention. Maybe the reality of losing regular access feels uncomfortable. Maybe she had assumed you'd always be around and your absence surprised her. Maybe somebody else she was interested in didn't work out. You don't need to accuse her of any of these things. You don't even need to know immediately. Just slow down and watch what she actually does. That's what guys don't do. They wait 3 months hoping she'll come back, and when she finally sends "Hey stranger," they mentally plan the wedding before they've even replied. Relax. One message is one message. If something meaningful has changed, it will become obvious through consistency. Does she actually want to see you? Does she communicate clearly? Does she acknowledge what happened before? Is she making an effort? Or does she simply want to restart the same vague communication that kept you emotionally stuck the first time? Those are completely different situations, because here's something I think every guy needs to learn. Access to you should correspond with the relationship you actually have with somebody. That doesn't mean you're calculating every interaction like some businessman negotiating a contract. It means you understand that different relationships naturally come with different levels of emotional investment. Your girlfriend probably gets more of your time than some woman you met twice. Your wife gets access to parts of your life that a casual acquaintance doesn't. Your best friend can probably call you at 2 in the morning with an emergency and you'll answer. Somebody you barely know doesn't automatically have that same level of access. That's normal. But guys sometimes maintain boyfriend-level investment after the relationship has been reduced to something completely different. They're still solving problems, providing constant reassurance, rearranging schedules, giving rides, paying for things, listening to hours of emotional venting, and making themselves available at any moment. Then they're confused about why the relationship doesn't progress. Well, because you're voluntarily giving the highest level of investment inside a connection that no longer has the commitment that used to accompany it. And eventually, you're going to feel cheated, even though nobody technically promised you anything. You know, imagine she calls you one night and starts talking about another guy she's interested in. This is probably the clearest test of whether you've genuinely accepted the new dynamic. She's saying, "There's this guy at work, and I can't tell whether he likes me. Now what happens?" If you're truly platonic, maybe you laugh and give her your opinion like you would with anybody else. But if you're sitting there feeling your chest tighten while pretending everything is cool, what are you doing? You're voluntarily putting yourself in emotional situations that hurt you because you're afraid that saying no will eliminate whatever tiny possibility remains. Some guys will literally give dating advice to a woman they're still in love with. Think about how absurd that becomes. He's telling her what text to send another man, while secretly hoping their relationship fails. Then if it does fail, he's comforting her, and throughout the whole process he's telling himself, "I'm showing her that I'm different." No man, you're torturing yourself. And eventually that frustration is going to leak out. Maybe you'll become passive-aggressive, maybe you'll suddenly explode, maybe you'll start making sarcastic comments about the guys she dates. And from her perspective, it will seem like you changed out of nowhere because she thought you had accepted the arrangement. That's why honesty at the beginning prevents ugliness later. So the mature response isn't necessarily to stay, and it isn't necessarily to leave forever either. It's to stop lying to yourself about what you can handle. Maybe 6 months from now, you've completely moved on. You're seeing somebody else, and you run into her somewhere. You talk for 15 minutes, and it feels completely normal. Great. Maybe at that point, a genuine platonic connection is possible, because you're no longer secretly trying to convert it into something else. But immediately after rejection, when you're still checking your phone hoping her name appears, that's usually not the moment to prove how emotionally evolved you are by forcing yourself to stay close. Give yourself room to reset, because there is something strange that happens when you finally stop monitoring somebody else's feelings toward you. You begin noticing your own standards again. You start asking whether you even liked the way the situation was going. You start remembering things you ignored when you were focused on winning her over. You start realizing that attraction made you evaluate everything from the perspective of, how do I keep her? Instead of asking, is this actually the kind of relationship I want? And man, once that question starts entering your mind, the entire balance of the situation begins to change.